Hello, listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. I have a very special guest. All my guests are special, but this girl is going to blow you away with the great story she has. And I met her a couple of years ago through the Chamber of Commerce. So you can always get a hold of me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. If you'd like to be a guest or you know somebody that would like to be a guest, you're going to have a hard time keeping up with this gal, but I want to let you try. So this is Viviana Oropeza, and I might have just butchered her name. I apologize if that was the case, but anyway, Viviana, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, and you said my name perfectly, so
Oh, good.
you didn't
Yeah,
butcher it.
yeah, and it's funny. So I grew up in East San Diego, so I have some background with Hispanic names, or I'll say Mexican names. I don't think Hispanic is a I don't think that's the right word. I think white people made that word up just for whatever reason. But anyway, Um, so I met Viviana through the Chamber of Commerce, through the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, right? Is that how we
Yeah.
met? So
Yeah,
we were kind of,
it
yeah, go
was a
ahead.
Christmas party, I think, between the Poway Chamber of Commerce and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, I think we were getting right. And I was working with the whoever was leading it up at the time, and we were trying to do more stuff collectively, right? We were trying to do more collaborative things because a lot of times these organizations, they just stick to themselves and they're not getting the benefit of this network that's out there.
Right.
But the reason I wanted you on my podcast is you really sparked my interest with you were telling a little bit of your story on Facebook um, about about how you became an attorney and what the struggles were and this and that and how you got over those. But I want to
Yeah.
ask you a few questions about kind of a few things before you tell that story. Is that okay?
Okay.
So I just blanked out what I was going to ask you. So what type of law do you practice primarily? First of all,
Well, primarily I do business law. It's corporate law, and
okay,
I do estates. So,
okay, cool. So, what made you decide you wanted to become an attorney?
I think it was a combination of things. I wanted to be an attorney when I was a kid.
Hmm.
I watched a lot of Ally McBeal.
I remember
And I was
that
like,
show.
oh, I want to be just like her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you went to school here locally? Did you grow up here locally?
Uh, I I I'm gonna call myself binational, I guess.
Okay.
I was raised on both sides of the border. I did I was raised here in Southern California, different
Okay.
areas of Southern California. But I was also raised in a little town in Mexico called Teocaltiche. It's
Okay.
in the state of Jalisco. So I was like a small town girl in Mexico.
Oh, nice. So I met, in fact, one of our movers yesterday that I've known for, I don't know, 15 years. I don't know how long I've known him. He grew up in Mexico as well. And when I worked at Pepsi as a kid, we had several of our employees lived across the border. They would come over every morning and drive that commute. I don't know how they did it, but we had a lot of that going on. So, and like I said, I grew up in East San Diego, so I was around multicultural. I'm so glad I did that because I was pretty well rounded by the time I was a young man that I had, dealt with all that. You went to high school here in San Diego?
So I was born in San Diego, but I went to high school in Redlands. It's in the Inland Empire, just
Okay.
north
Yeah.
of here. Um, but I spent about I would say about 7 of my 13 or years in
Yeah.
right before college in Mexico. So it was like back and forth, like a year here, two there, a year here, and it was a back and forth thing.
How was the education compared to here?
Um, they're definitely advanced in math.
Really?
And then of course learning history from both perspectives was always really interesting to me.
I thought that was interesting too. I've met people from England, right? A lot of people, and I've always wondered how they taught our American history or their history
Yeah.
versus American history, right? Because obviously there's probably some different opinions of what's happened,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, because my roots are in Mexico, but I was born here in San Diego,
Sure.
and I'm proud to be in this country, and I mean it's given me all the opportunities that I have. So
Yeah.
being in Mexico and then hearing them tell their side about how they felt about our country was always a shock to me.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, we have different opinions depending on who
Yeah.
you're talking to, especially if you have older relatives, they definitely have different opinions of how, each side of the border was handling each other, right?
Yeah. The Louisiana Purchase and all of that, is
Sure.
controversial.
So, one of the things I love a lot of things about you, but this attorney in heels, I love that. I'm going to use your picture when I send out the podcast. I love that you've branded yourself in a way like that. And I think it's really cool you do that. But do you get, what kind of opinion do you get about that when you were talking to other attorneys?
Yeah, when I first did it, I did get a lot of pushback.
Uh-huh.
Attorneys pride themselves in being like elitists and
Right.
and the fact that I branded it was, it was controversial. I had colleagues that would tell me that it was unprofessional, and female I had female attorneys who bashed me.
That was going to
They
be my next question because,
Yeah,
I've had other women on my podcast, and I've obviously in business, I was dealing with men and women. I
yeah,
don't, I kind of, I resist saying a woman attorney because you're an attorney, right? I
right,
kind of resist saying a woman CEO or a woman attorney or whatever because I don't like the singling people out. But
right.
you're probably in a real male dominated industry.
Yeah,
Is that
I'm in a male dominated industry for sure.
yeah.
I mean, they say that partners at law firms, there's more partners at law firms named John than there is females. It's
Oh,
like,
that's funny.
I'm serious, like like the numbers are ridiculous, and also um as far as like Latina lawyers, we're like less than 2%. We're like 1.5% of all lawyers.
So don't take this the wrong way, and I hope my listeners don't take this the wrong way. But you are really so you're Hispanic, you're a woman, you've branded yourself, you're probably in a really small. I mean, you keep getting your. I'm not saying it that way. That's the wrong way to say it. You're in a very small percentage of people, but you're doing well, right? I
Yeah.
like the fact that you've made. I think your branding makes you normal. That's kind of what
Yeah,
I
I
think in
mean,
business.
yeah, I mean, from a business perspective, because I don't only have a law degree, I have an MBA, right? I have an MBA in finance. So I
Oh wow, I
understand
didn't know that.
business. Yeah, so I understand business. And from that perspective, like every business owner will tell you branding and marketing is everything, right?
100%.
Like
Yeah,
nobody's gonna remember, Viviana Oropeza, but they'll remember Attorney in Heels. Just last night, I was at the university club at a networking event, and another colleague that I had met before COVID at an event came up to me and she's like, "Hey, Attorney in Heels! I don't remember your name, but I know you're the Attorney in Heels."
that's
And it's like,
exactly what branding is for.
and that's exactly what branding does. It makes people remember who you are and what you do, even though they don't remember your name. They know how to find you. So marketing is key, and I didn't want to overlook that. But also, I'm kind of I wanted to do things my way. I mean, I wasn't going to start a law firm and then turn it into, what everybody else has. I wanted it to be my
That
way.
I just love that about you. And this is where I'm going to make my daughters listen to this podcast because this is where I want them. I have 7 daughters and a couple of them in business, and I want them to look at business this way too.
Yeah.
I can see people when I'm talking to customers at times. I can see my colleagues looking at me going, "Not the 7 girls and son that story again." But I'll tell you what, when I was in the construction industry and I called people and they didn't remember who I was if I was selling them something, and I said I was the one with 7 daughters, they'd always remember me immediately and say, "You know what? I was telling my wife about you," and
Yeah.
and now with the grandkids, it's like it's a way of branding yourself to be. And listen, I'm one of those do my things my own way as well. So I
Yeah.
think it's wonderful that you do it, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's really smart that you do that. And having come from the background of the Chamber of Commerce and thing, this was my key thing to get people to do was to market them, brand themselves, become your brand, right? And you've done a
Right.
great job at that. Now, how long have you been? I don't want to ask you your age, but how long have you been an attorney?
Well, I've been an attorney for 5 years. Actually, my firm
Okay,
turns 5 this year. Um, I I passed the bar and I launched my firm the next day.
that's awesome. So let's get back to your story. So
Right.
when you were, I didn't see it, I didn't look at it as you were complaining. I looked at it as that you were very proud of, some of the stuff you overcame.
Right.
Was there anything that really stuck out that you had to overcome besides being a Hispanic woman and being young? Because I think being young as an attorney is probably not great either, right? Because there's a lot of older attorneys.
Yeah, there's a lot of old white men and, you have
Yeah,
to, I guess, make yourself known amongst them and
sure.
they have to take you serious to a certain extent.
Well,
I mean, I love being
that's the thing.
I
You got
love
to
being
make them,
underestimated.
you got to make them take you serious, right?
Right. And but, even if they underestimate you, like, walking into the boardroom or walking into the courtroom and
Sure.
crushing them is awesome. It feels great because
Oh, I think that them underestimating you is a great advantage for you, right?
it
Because
is
they're
an
thinking,
advantage.
just dealing with this dumb woman, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So,
God, I hope they don't say things like that. But you know, this generation, my generation, is like that, right? We look at a lot of younger people and go, "Oh, they're just stupid and millennials and this and that." And I can tell you that I run up against a lot of brilliant young people, and a couple of them are my children that are just brilliant people in what they do. And I love that people underestimate them because they will kill them. I mean, they'll kill them in business.
yeah, if it makes them prepare, yeah, they don't think they have to prepare as well because they're facing off with me, but they don't know that I'm in there.
Exactly.
I'm in there to draw blood.
Right. Well,
Theoretically
that's the
speaking.
kind of attorney you want. I mean, when I was unfortunately had gone through a divorce, and that's what I wanted. I wanted, they'll say, "Well, she's kind of a bitch," and I'm like, "Good. That's what I want. That's who I want representing me." I always feel like women in business are better, more disciplined than men. Right. That's been my experience. That's no offense to all you men that are listening, but it's been my experience with a lot of women I've dealt with. A lot of times will prefer to work with a woman because they're just more disciplined.
Yeah.
They're more focused on what the total goal is.
Yeah, and the truth of that is that we're forced to be. We're forced to be more prepared than the rest because we're underestimated and we are not given opportunities if we don't. So
Do you feel like that is something you think about on a regular basis that you have to be a little bit better than the competition because of things, because of your
uh,
circumstances?
I do. I do because I for one like you want to be able to do well by your clients, but also because if it's already hard,
Right.
to be in this industry and be underestimated and overlooked. And but if you're not prepared and they can't see results, then um and outstanding results, then you'll get overlooked in the shuffle.
Now, do you have your own firm and you have attorneys that work with you, or are you part of a firm?
I have my own firm. I started my firm right as soon as I passed the bar, and
Right.
I am still currently working solo, but I created a network with other attorneys. So if I have other clients that come to me in other practice areas, I have a lawyer in all of them
Oh,
to,
that's awesome.
yeah.
So tell me about your story. So you went to high school in Redlands, and you went. What college did you go? What did you start out college wise going to?
So I went to college at Cal State San Bernardino, and then I did political science there. Your typical bachelor's degree that most attorneys you get before going to law school. So I did
Right.
that. Um, by the time I was 22, I had my bachelor's, and then I applied to law school and I didn't get in. So kind of had a pivot from there.
Right.
There they have a law school admissions test that I just couldn't wrap my head around.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with law. It has to do with it's like a logic games
Okay.
exam, and
See, I
they
would. That's where it'd kick me right out. I just am
yeah.
not good at that stuff. But anyway, so you finally passed, obviously.
Yeah, so I did that. You can only take it a certain amount of times a year, so I took it. I didn't get high enough scores. I still continued to apply and I was rejected. I kept doing that for about 5 to 6 years, and on my 7th year, I finally got into law school. I just
Did
kept
that
going.
is that typical though of law students? Is that normal?
I guess it just depends. Some people have a hard time with the LSAT. I guess it just depends on, what your strengths are.
Sure.
But for me, it was difficult. It wasn't something that I understood. It was, lining up clowns and colors, and literally that's like the topics that you
Right.
encounter in it, and I just couldn't get past it. And I just kept trying. I think I think it was not giving up that that I finally like got in.
Well, I think that that's even more intriguing for your story is that you could have easily given up, right? No one would have said, it would have been okay. I mean, right? All right, I've tried it this many times. I'm not going to do it anymore. But you continued to push through, and you finally got in. So you
Yeah,
must have really wanted to be an attorney. I mean, you really were driven.
yeah, and you know what? And I wasn't just like sitting around waiting to get admitted
Of
either.
course.
I a year after I finished my bachelor's degree, I started an MBA program, and then I started a career in finance, and I did that for 5 years before I actually got into law school, and then did that transition.
Good for you, man. You're just too smart. Look at you, just doing all getting educated out there.
Yeah,
And yeah,
and I tell, when I talk about my story, I say that it's an alignment in the stars, because the tangent, that what I call the tangent at the time of, studying finance, and business, is really crucial to what I do, because I work with
sure.
business owners in my legal practice. So I'm able to assess my clients' needs not only legally but also from a financial standpoint. So
It must give them, yes, a level of comfort too that you kind of, that that part of the business. Because
yeah,
if you would have got in right away and you wouldn't have done this finance feat, you would have been a little bit less educated, really, in the whole scheme of
yeah.
things. And it was always business law you wanted to do, or did you ever think about doing any criminal law or anything like that?
I did think about criminal law. I actually have more criminal law studying under my belt than most corporate lawyers do. I
Right.
did take a lot of criminal law in law school. I took corporate criminal law theory and a lot of other criminal law classes. So I am well versed in it. I just don't practice it. Um, but I just, when I graduated from law school, it felt very organic to go into business law, because in my prior career I had worked with small business owners and on the financial side, and being able to do that on the legal side, it just kind of gave me an edge. And I was fresh out of law school, starting my own firm, so I knew
Right.
I wanted to do the thing that I knew, so I just think
Is
it was organic.
So excuse my ignorance though. If you let's say you decided in the next couple of years you wanted to switch into criminal law, do you have to go back to school?
No, you don't, but they do they do force you to be, I guess, versed in that. So
Right.
the the California Bar Association and the American Bar Association tell you have to do two things. If you're going to practice in an area that you're not familiar with, you either got to learn it,
Right.
or you have to bring in another attorney that's better versed in it than you are, and work together. So, and then you can't bill for learning the law, right? So
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, so a lot of what happens is, um, we get into a practice area and we become so good at our niche that moving out is just the cost, the the brain power to do that is
Sure.
just so, it's substantial, because when you go into the bar, you have to know 17 subjects of the law. So when you're practicing, like, you stick to one, because they're all very complex and they're all very unique. So
This is interesting to me. I was a criminal law student, but I wanted to be into law enforcement. I wanted to be in law enforcement years ago before I just had two little kids at the time. And I actually was in going through a divorce, and I was in the background check for the California Highway Patrol and the Sheriff's Department, and I wasn't going to get on with that. And probably better. I mean, it was looking back, it was a good decision that I was not in law enforcement. I don't think I would have been very good at it. In that I'm too little too attached, a little too emotionally attached to things, and I
yeah,
wouldn't be able to have to separate myself. But I'd never talked to an attorney this I didn't know all those things you just told me. So that's interesting to me. And hopefully some of the younger people out there, men or women, will listen to this and be able to get some information. Um, so man, so I didn't know you. So it took a long time for you to decide, well, actually to get over some obstacles you had to get involved with.
Yeah, I mean, and even then, like by the time I got into law school, like I had already struggled because
Sure.
I left home when I was 16. So, my parents lived in Mexico when I was 16, and I kind of just left and came back here to the US. So I was on my own. I was, working and struggling to just finish high school. So then by the time I got into law school, I was already exhausted.
So hang on. So now you're just getting more intrigued here. So you came back, you left your parents in Mexico, came back
Yeah.
here. Did you live with family here
I
or
did. I lived with an uncle here, and I lived there until I got into college, and then I moved into the dorms in college.
so you were working, so you're having to pay for all this on your own too, right?
Yeah,
Wow, that's impressive, dude. That's really impressive that you got through all this and now you have your own firm 5 years into your own firm.
yeah. It's it's hasn't been easy. Um, you know, sometimes when we're not having the best of day, you got to remember where you came from and where you are, and know that
Sure.
you're blessed to be where you are. And I
So
am
this is
blessed.
what my whole podcast started out to be, was how to get over limitations, right? We all have limitations in our life. A lot of times we create them ourselves. I guess you could say you've created some of these yourself. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. You're still in the limit. You're still
Yeah,
having to get over these hurdles, still having to get through. I mean, if you looked at the alternative, if you would have stayed in Mexico and just finished out high school there, a lot of this might not have happened. You never know. And you had some nice family support with your uncle, which is
yeah,
cool. And then I think it's important. Your story, everybody's story is so important to their success, right? The places
yeah,
you've come from, the things you've gotten over, those hurdles you've gotten over. And listen, my kids did not grow up in a perfect family. I'd love to tell you that I gave them a perfect family, but they had
yeah,
things to get over. My oldest daughter is in she works in the government, and where she works in Louisiana, she's like the only girl, maybe one or two girls in this whole parish, which is like a county that run this whole thing. So and she's very much like me. She's very driven. You guys would hit it off like really well if you ever met. If she's ever here, I should get her with you just to go have a drink or something, because you remind me a lot of her. She's very driven. She just was not going to give up no matter how, no matter what happened. And she left here, got married, and had a bad relationship, had a child, and then had to go, put herself through school at Tulane. And
yeah.
so she's been on my podcast before, but yeah, I knew something when I read that post you put on Facebook. I knew there were some things that we didn't know about you that I'm glad you're coming out with.
Yeah, there's definitely things that could have gone the other way. Well, the
Sure.
reason I left home when I was 16 is because I had a very like traditional father who was basically wanted me to, get ready to get married off, and
Right.
that's not what I wanted for my life. So, yeah, things definitely could have gone a lot different if I wouldn't have taken that uncomfortable step to just like leave home and figure it out on my own.
Yeah. So funny. I was not that traditional father. In fact, having this many grandkids, one of the reasons it surprises me so much is that I thought my kids were going to do more. Not that it's not good that they have children, but more things with their career. I thought I was having a couple more career minded. That's not the right way to say it, because they're all doing well. They all have good jobs, and they do, and then they have kids on top of that. But I thought they would have waited longer, I guess, and went out and did the college route and did all those things first, and not. I wasn't necessarily super hip on them getting into a relationship early out of high school and things like that, and I wanted them to live a little bit. But they're doing that now with their kids and spouses. So.
Yeah, and I think you probably gave him a good example of a good marriage and a good family to where they felt comfortable doing that.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate that. So Kit and I, we met at school. Two of our kids were getting an award at school. And I'll tell you a funny thing. Kit brought this up when I told her you were going to be on my podcast. She goes, Yeah, she's the one that said I was too good looking for you. And I said, well, I mean,
Yeah.
she's right. There's no doubt about that.
I was like, yeah, you're
I definitely
that's
married
your
up.
wife. She's too hot for you. I remember.
And I remember that you saying that. That was probably a saying we got a big kick out of that. She keeps bringing that up, by the way. Thanks for that. No, I'm just kidding. I definitely married up, but we had because we were both single parents. And I've talked about this in other podcasts. We did have a good relationship, and I think we set a good example for the kids where they needed to expect respect from their partners and things like that. So
Yeah.
but oddly enough, my son just had his fifth child, so he has more kids than any of my kids, any of my daughters. He has. So it's funny because he didn't have to have them, right? His wife had to have them, but
Right.
they had four boys and they just had a daughter, so that he's elated about that. And he's a professional, so he has a master's from USD. He's in he does cybersecurity for a big financial company, so he
Wow.
does great. They live out in Texas. But so yeah, but I was not that traditional. You're getting married, and you're 18, arranged marriage, all that stuff. I was very much against that. I wanted them to live a lot more, and
Yeah.
do some stuff on their own.
Yeah, I
But
can
that's
understand
awesome. I
that because
mean,
that's what I want for my kids too. Like, because I kind of did do the traditional thing. I mean, it
yeah,
doesn't seem like it because I'm very career oriented, but when I finished my bachelor's degree, I got married. So the master's and the law degree were all in conjunction with my, being married to my first husband
yeah,
and having kids in the middle. Like I had a kid while I was in law school.
that's crazy.
Yeah, I like to pair kids with degrees apparently because I had my first child when I was doing my master's in finance um and then when I was in law school, my second year of law school, I had my son. So
Man,
that's
that's had a lot of balls in the air.
yeah, it was a lot, definitely.
Man, I didn't even know you had kids. I
I
don't.
do.
I'm not going to ask you how old you are, and I don't know. I'm thinking you're
Yeah,
my
well,
daughter's.
my kids are my kids are 12. So my daughter's 12 and my son is 6.
So you
Um,
must be around my daughter's age, my oldest daughter.
yeah.
So I had a daughter, then a son, and then boom, 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 girls, and then Kit has two daughters. So when we got together, we had six daughters at home, and
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. And I had a very clean garage because I was in there a lot. I'll be in the garage. But they're all doing good. The only problem I have now is they're all shotgun blasting. So I have one in Oregon, one in Louisiana. My son's in Texas. I have a couple kids up in Temecula,
Wow.
but they're not. We go and see them when we can. But man, you had a lot of balls in the air. Then you're having kids on top of that. That's crazy.
Yeah. It was one of those things where I mean, I know they put a lot of pressure on women to, you know, do the whole family thing, and it was something that I don't know that if I wanted to do it as much as I thought that it was like something that just needed to be done, and I did
Well,
it.
that's an interesting statement because I do think
Yeah.
that, and we probably get that from our parents to start with, right? And that's probably why
Yeah.
I got married because I thought it was time to get married. Well, it wasn't. That wasn't the best idea, right? Although I had my
Yeah.
children, it was not the best idea for me to get married. I really wasn't ready. And I've been very outspoken with my kids on relationships and said, look, just take your time, just relax. If it's going to happen, it'll happen. Just, get some other things done that you have to get done. But definitely
Right.
there's a societal, kind of push on this is
Yeah,
what you
there's a
should be
pressure.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely pressure and the being married and having kids and at least for us women, we do have a lot of um people telling us that our clock's ticking. So I had my first
Well,
child when I was
that's
25.
none of their business, by the way. You have to do what you have to do. And, I am traditional in that I think it's both parents have very big responsibility. Men and women have different responsibilities with their kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. I know that every liberal in the world will be killing me for that right now, but there are positive things you get from men as fathers and positive things you get from moms, mothers.
Yeah.
And I think you need both. I think that balance helps people. I think it keeps kids, I think it's a good balance for kids. So
Yeah.
that would be my like
Yeah,
now
I
there
mean,
are single moms out there that have to do both. I get that. I was a single dad too, and I had to kind of do both. When I
yeah.
met Kit, she would get mad at me the way I dressed the kids because I'd buy them Vans and jeans, and she says, "Nope, we're not doing that all the time." And
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going through divorce right now too, so I'm
oh, you
kind of
just need more stuff on your plate. We need to
yeah, so
get
I'm
you
just,
to
also learning the whole transition period of, going from having two parents at home to balancing just having one and
yeah.
back and forth and keeping the kids stable. And so it's just, you
So
know,
I did a podcast. You should look at it on divorce, and how I didn't like hang out my dirty laundry, but I definitely talked about how it affects children and how important it is to stay, no matter how much. And I don't want to get off track on our podcast here, but no matter how much hurt there is between you and your spouse, these kids are gold, right? They need to be taken care of, and
right.
you got a lot of sacrifice, even more so when you're going through a divorce. There's a lot more. You gotta be patient. There's a lot more,
Yeah, and you got to keep a lot to
understanding.
yourself because there's a lot of things the
Yes,
kids don't need to know. Um,
exactly.
so that they can, feel a little stability and
Yeah, a lot of communication between both parties. And I know, listen, I took the asshole route, kind of, because I was getting that from my spouse, and it had no positive bearing for the kids. It was zero
yeah,
good input, right? You gotta, and so but I've had these long conversations with my kids about these because I was married twice before I met Kit, and when I met Kit, I'm like, I am not getting married, no way in hell. And we
yeah,
dated for 4 years, um, we, but we've had a lot of conversations with the kids about the divorce, and it wasn't their fault. It was our stupidity or whatever, our bad choices, whatever it was. It wasn't. They had nothing to do with it.
right. Yeah, and I try to, keep everything as friendly as possible. And,
Yeah, it's
you know,
difficult, man. I know.
it's so hard
Believe me.
because, if I usually meet fire with fire.
Yep.
And so,
Well, yeah.
trying to be the bigger person is hard sometimes.
Like I said, it's an entirely different podcast. And then you were also raised in that traditional, and
Yeah,
you're going to fight. You don't turn and run. You turn and fight, right?
yeah,
So, well, you
definitely.
good luck with that.
Thanks.
Yeah, anytime you want to chat offline about that, both Kit and I are open to having a conversation about that. We have some experience, unfortunately, but it's all good. And we have two grandkids at home that we're raising. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we have a lot on our plate too, like you, but I don't have as much on my plate as you do. You just want to keep throwing stuff on.
Yeah, when life feels a little boring, I just throw some fire on it and see what
There you
happens.
go. Some gasoline on the fire. Well,
Yeah.
listen, I'm so proud of you. I'm proud I know you because you are setting a great example for your kids and for my daughters, for other people out there, that you're a driver, man, and you just, when an obstacle comes to you, it appears to me that you just kick it down and go through it, go over it, do whatever you have to do to succeed, and that's not super popular anymore, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to keep going.
Yeah,
It's all you
that's right.
can
I mean,
do.
what choice do you have? You have your kids
Yeah.
there that they're watching you, going, "What's mom going to do next?" And you gotta, yeah, that's right. You need to put food on the table. You need to do all those things,
Yeah, and
and
I
you
have
need
a
to,
daughter, so
yeah,
I have a daughter that I want her to be strong and
sure.
also know that she could do anything. So,
Well, I think you're a great example for her. So just keep it up. And like I said, anytime you just want to chat, man, hit me up on Facebook or whatever, and we can chat about it. If you're just having one of those days, man, I'll try to lift you up as much as I can.
thank you. I
But
appreciate
I'm
that.
so happy you came on here, and I'll be back in that networking system sooner than later. COVID
Yeah.
was really difficult for me because that was my game, right? That was what I did. It's
Yeah.
funny when whose birthday? There's two people when their birthdays come up. We're all in a picture together at that brewery up in North County.
Okay.
And so when their birthday comes up or something, it'll show me and you and Kit's in the picture. And what's
Yeah.
the guy's name? Who was the guy that was running the whole thing?
Ricardo Villa.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, he'd always be
he's
in there.
currently the president of the Hispanic Chamber.
Right. So his face would always pop up. I was supposed to meet with him a while back for something, but I'll hit him up. I have his phone number and everything. But yeah, when that picture comes up, I remember, and that was my whole gig, right? Was networking, and would tell people how important it was, and people have forgotten how important networking is. It's very important to get out there and talk to people.
Yeah, definitely. And not only just within your network, but, do cross networking, like, not
Sure.
just stick to one chamber, but also, you know, bring in other groups that you can all help each other out.
Yep. Well, Viviana, you keep it up, man. You're killing it in life, and I'm so like I said, I'm proud to know you, and this is going to be a good podcast for those young people out there, and especially women that know they need to fight through. And look, I'd love to tell you that the world's perfect and that there's not those guys out there that are going to be that way, but unfortunately, it's funny. Look at politics. I mean, how many times is a politician going to get caught doing something stupid with a girl,
Right.
right? Or taking advantage of that person, or saying the wrong thing on television, or doing it. I mean, it's like they don't learn, but they get this power. They get this, hey, I can do anything now because I'm this guy or this, and women do it too.
Yeah.
And they get this power, and it's like, Jesus, you're going to get, it's not right. You cannot do this. And I've had instances with my daughters working in service industries where they've gotten treated like that. And I, of course, being the guy I am, I want to go fix it for them, but
Yeah.
it's illegal to what I want to do. But so I have to give them the option. Do you want me to fix it for you, or do you want to, take the proper channels? And thankfully they've taken those proper channels.
Yeah.
Um, but it just I don't get how we just can't get it through our heads. You can't treat people like that, right? And
Yeah.
I don't, I got news for you. I don't think it's getting better. To be honest with you, I think it's getting worse.
Yeah, and all you can do is surround yourself with like-minded people and
One
the
hundred
people
percent.
the people who are gonna uplift you and who have similar goals as you. They say you're the average of the 5 people that you hang out with, so
Yeah,
as
and
long
keep
as
that high road. And so one of the things I always told my kids is, if you tell me who you're hanging out with and what you're reading, I'll tell you where you'll be in 2 years, right?
yeah,
And that's a big deal for your kids, right? Who are you hanging out with? Because my mom used to say, you can be a bad influence, but you can be a good influence too.
right.
So you're one of those people, you get around you and you're a good influence on people. You're teaching people that you got to keep driving through and that things will get better and the sun will come up. And,
Yeah,
yeah, you have those days where you just want to not get up, but you got to get up, right? You just
yeah,
got to get up and keep pushing.
yeah. Because we all have those days where we don't wanna get out of bed, but,
Yep.
put on a glittery pair of heels and do your hair and you feel great.
The attorney in heels. I love that so much. Like I said, I'm going to use that. I'll use it in the intro for the podcast. So listen, I want to appreciate you coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And we'll get connected. Stay on for just a second. Let me do an outro here and let me talk to you just for a minute. This was the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast with Viviana Oropeza. Um, One of my favorite people in the world, even more so now because she told me some cool stuff about her. But she's the attorney in heels, and I'll put her information in the link so you guys can check her out if you need a business attorney. This is the gal you need. So Ed Franklin No Limits podcast, Ed Franklin No Limits at gmail.com if you want to contact me. And I will talk to you all soon.